This is TalkLoudRadio.com.
Watch the deep one for the end zone. Phelan is down there. Oh, he got it! He got it! He got it! Touchdown!
What is going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 41 of the Talk Loud Radio Show. The Armchair Fantasy Show. Of course, we're presented by TalkLoudRadio.com. You can find us every Tuesday and Friday on Facebook on the GoingFor2.com Facebook page and streaming in the Going For Two app right after the show has been published. So we had a pretty good week last week. Week 2 was a pretty good week overall, I think, for me. I think just talking to Tim and Gerson, I think they had a pretty decent week as well. But go ahead, introduce them on the show here. Of course, y'all know him by now. We've got Gerson, the FanDuel guru. Gerson, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great.
Good stuff.
I'm so pumped for this week. Let's go, baby.
Let's do it. All right, and over on DraftKings, we have Mr. Tim Strobel. How you doing tonight, man?
Man, I'm doing great. Like you said, coming off a good week, too.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, let's talk a little bit about week 2. So what were some of your best calls last week? Tim, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, well, after the very high-scoring week 1, I was kind of worried about how some of the scores were going to be in week 2. My cash game did well. I think I scored around 150 points on that. But most impressively, one of my GPP lines hit 200.
Nice.
So I was pretty happy about that. Coming off, we're going to mention it again, but sick call of the week last week, Corey Clement made its way into that lineup. It allowed me to pay up for Gordon and McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, and Juju Smith-Schuster. So obviously all those guys went off and allowed me to do pretty well. So I did well in cash, and then that one entry pretty much paid off most of my GPPs.
Nice. Good stuff. What about you, Gerson? How was your day?
I did great on DraftKings. FanDuel, I didn't do too hot because of the Antonio Brown, Julio Jones kind of like destruction. But overall, I killed it on DraftKings. I actually played the prime time, and I took second place in one of those tournaments, the bigger tournament.
Nice.
And then I I had a roster that just like scored like 170 points in the Wildcat, and I was really happy with that roster because it had a lot of the plays that we all talked about, like Connor, DeAndre Hopkins, and Deshaun Watson stack, and then those other running backs like Melvin Gordon and James Conner and Todd Gurley. So it kind of sucks because you know how it is in DFS industry, like that one little value could make a difference. Yep. And Antonio Callaway kind of opened up on Sunday morning. And that's what sucks about having a podcast and a video like this. There's only so much information we can give you out. I mean, we can't predict the future because if we could, trust me. I mean, as much as I love, I'd be doing this, but
right.
I'd probably be doing something else if I can predict the future.
All right, yeah. Unfortunately, my week wasn't quite as good as y'all's. I was just happy that I broke even. My cash game, unfortunately, had Case Keenum and Emmanuel Sanders in there. Of course, they were terrible that first half. They ended up coming back in the second half, and I think on the last drive, they actually cashed my cash lineup, thankfully. So my cash lineup broke me even on both sites, thankfully. So I call that a win just because before that I was down on everything. So my Corey Clement call, of course, paid off last week. The sick call of the week. It kind of worked out because J.J. got hurt. I wasn't really counting on that, but he got hurt. He got the cheap touchdown. So I'll take it. That's definitely a good call. So I'm glad that I was able to have the guts to play him last week. All right, let's go ahead and jump down into this slate here. Week 3, of course, as always, we'll start with quarterbacks. We'll start over on FanDuel first. Gerson, if you want to talk a bit about some of the elite plays on FanDuel.
So on FanDuel this week, like it kind of paid off like almost every week that I've done it this way. Pay down a quarterback, don't pay for the elite quarterback, but everybody's going to be playing Patrick Mahomes, and I can understand why. I mean, right now, that's the thing that sucks about how when you have a quarterback that start off really hot, you don't know what their floor or their ceiling is.
Right.
So, I mean, the ceiling that Patrick Mahomes right now is, he got like 35 points last week, 38 points.
Yeah, something like that.
We don't know his floor yet. We don't know exactly what lowest he can. I mean, we can't predict that. But Patrick Mahomes against the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, overall, if you haven't been watching football, this is like between him and Ryan Fitzpatrick, everybody's going crazy. So Kansas City is the only team that it's implied total over 30 right now. And to give you an idea how many teams been like over 31.5 in the last 4 years, there's only been 16.
Wow.
That have been projected that high in Vegas. So with that total, and this is the crazy thing, all the touchdowns for Kansas City this year have been passing touchdowns. They haven't had one rushing touchdown yet. So that equals to about 18% of the touchdown for Patrick Mahomes. I can't see that exactly being,
the norm.
Yeah, it's not going to always happen. But, I love Patrick Mahomes in this matchup against the 49ers.
All right. So Patrick Mahomes. What about over on DraftKings? You got anybody over there besides Patrick Mahomes, Tim?
Not really. I think that if I'm going to pay up this week, it's going to be for Mahomes. Otherwise, I'm going to be living in the mid-range.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with both of y'all. I don't think I'm paying up on anybody here. The only one I would consider would be Drew Brees in another high-scoring game with the Atlanta Falcons. But even that, he's on the road. We know Drew Brees isn't as good on the road, so I don't know if I'm going to pay up quite for him because I think on FanDuel especially, it's only $400 more to get up to Mahomes. So I'd prefer Mahomes over Drew Brees. Mahomes is in his home opener. It's going to be a ruckus crowd there. They're playing my boys, the 49ers, which, sad to say, that we're probably the best defense they've seen so far this year, which we're not a great defense. So saying that shows you how bad defense they've been playing already. But at the same time, it's their home opener, so they can definitely be a good play there for sure. All right, let's go to Tim this time with your some of your mid-range guys. Who do you like over on DraftKings with your mid-range?
Yeah, I think there's two guys really that I'm targeting a lot. I'm going to have a lot of exposure to both of them. I think that the way DraftKings has priced quarterbacks this year, it's a little bit tighter. I think it forces you to take a little bit more risk, pay a couple hundred more for a guy you think has more upside. And so I think this week it's going to come down. I still haven't decided on which one's going to be my cash game quarterback, but one way or another, it's either Watson or Deshaun Watson or Cam Newton. Both are at home. Both, I think, are in great spots. They have rushing upside. They have good point totals on the board. So in terms of allocation, I think those and one other guy we're going to get to are going to make up my highest allocations.
All right, good stuff. What about over on FanDuel, Gerson? Who you like over on FanDuel?
So I know a lot of people consider the pricing tiers of DraftKings and FanDuel very differently in mid-range, high tier, and whatnot. So I did want to touch on Cam Newton. Cam Newton, it's I play on both sides. Everybody knows that. So the price differential on both sides is incredible. Cam Newton's almost a value on DraftKings. He's kind of like a higher elite tier quarterback. Cam Newton, I mean, right now they're going to face the Bengals. So I like Cam Newton this week. He's a favorite at home, a 3-point favorite. And the Bengals have allowed 300 passing yards in the last 2 games, basically. And along with his price on DraftKings being a great price, but I think his upside kind of makes up for it. He's a running quarterback, and with DJ Moore kind of got him going last week. I know it's only one catch or something. I think they said they wanted to get him more involved, and DJ Moore is really good. So along with him, McCaffrey, what's his name, Funches. Funches does have a tough matchup. It kind of worries me a little bit, but I think Cam Newton's an elite tier player up there. But Tim nailed it. I think Deshaun Watson on FanDuel is a great option. Deshaun Watson with Will Fuller have averaged 29.5 points per game when Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins play together. And as we all know, it's not always going to be like that, But that's a pretty high average when Will Fuller is really healthy. Yep. And basically the Giants just allowed, I don't know, more with DeAndre Hopkins stack, I love it because what's their name? Janoris Jenkins, is that his name, the cornerback?
Yeah.
Yeah, he just allowed 107 yards on 7 receptions and whatnot. So, I mean, that was against, the Cowboys, so that's not very impressive. I mean, Tavon Austin, you allow a 75-yard touchdown. And the other thing that I really like about this Deshaun Watson call is that the Giants right now are ranked dead last in, what's it called? Football Outsiders adjusted sack rate. So any little time that you can give to Deshaun Watson, I think he's going to eat you up. So that's just my opinion, Don.
Yep. No, I agree 100%. I like both those calls. Of course, you do have the rushing upside with both of those. The only two I would add to that is as a sort of a pivot off the Mahomes call. I do like Jimmy G. He should get his number one receiver back this week, Marquise Goodwin. So he should be there. Hopefully they get Kittle involved again. I think last week we kind of all played him and he kind of let us all down. But I hope they get him back involved again. And then the other guy I got is Matt Ryan, more on DraftKings than on FanDuel. I think Matt Ryan's price is still pretty low. He's playing at home where he's a much better quarterback at home. And, Drew Brees is coming into town. It's going to be a shootout. It's a division game. So I like a Matt Ryan, Julio stack. And there's another guy that I like in this as well. But we'll talk about that towards the end of the podcast. But yeah, I think that those are my two guys for the mid-tier. All right, Gerson, we'll go to you now for the values over on DraftKings. Who you got?
Just remember, everybody, he's a 49ers fan, so he's biased.
A little biased. Hey, but on that note, before we get to that, just so no one knows that I'm actually not really that biased, me and you had a big argument last week about a certain player, Mr. Dante Pettis. I was against playing him. You were all for it, so I was against it, so I'm not that biased.
Yeah, I guess. We'll give him that one. You just mentioned Matt Ryan, right? So,
yes.
Yeah, Matt Ryan's a great play this week on FanDuel too. It's just like he just said. I mean, the matchup is incredible. So, and he on DraftKings he's priced as the 13th most expensive quarterback, so that's a big price differential. But that total is sitting at 28, and at home, I mean, I love it. I love that call. The only other quarterback I'm looking at on FanDuel right now, because I don't mind a Jimmy G call. I really don't. I can see the play. I mean, obviously that game has a high total, and we've already seen what the last 2 weeks been when there's a high total game. So it's pretty crazy. It's going to hurt me saying this because I really don't want to say it. Ryan Tannehill versus the Oakland Raiders. I'm going to pick on the Raiders because I know the real defense they have. I know last week they put up a pretty good game against, what's their name? Case Keenum.
Denver. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Denver. But I don't believe that's the real defense. I think it's worse. I looked at Pro Football Focus. They have some of the worst secondary players, and their front seven is very weak. So I believe them doing a cross-country trip. And I know they usually come in on Friday night, but like Jeff said earlier on, we discussed this. He said that, they're still tired. Jet lag is jet lag. And I've flown to Boston from Utah, so I know exactly what jet lag is. I mean, when my brother faces like this, like he doesn't want to deal with the world. It's the worst thing. So I don't know how people feel about Ryan Tannehill. I can see him being under-owned against a very bad defense of the Raiders and at home. So I think at 6,600 on FanDuel, that's pretty cheap. And you can stack him with either Kenny. I'm only playing Kenny Stills with them actually, or Kenyon Drake, the running back.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right, good stuff. What about over on DraftKings, Tim? Anybody you got over there that he didn't mention already?
No, I think you mentioned a big one, which is Matt Ryan. If you're not going to play one of those guys I mentioned earlier, you're going to take the savings down to Matt Ryan. A couple guys I do like in that range. One of them is kind of on a caveat, and that's Blake Bortles. I'm only interested in Blake Bortles if Leonard Fournette sits. His numbers are much higher when Fournette sits. He's a limited practice all week, so it looks like he's probably going to play. So I probably won't have much Bortles. But the other guy that I'm also interested in is Jared Goff at 5,900. I'm not seeing a lot of talk about Jared Goff, and that makes me interested because I like all of his pass catchers this week. Obviously, I like Todd Gurley, and he gets a lot of use out of the backfield too. So I think that with a lot of people playing, like I said, Ryan, Watson, Cam, you're going to be able to get Goff at significantly lower ownership.
Yeah, that's a good call because you're right. I haven't heard Goff's name mentioned at all. So that's a good call on Goff. Just a couple notes I had. I meant to mention on the Matt Ryan thing. I've heard a lot of, the Saints defense is really good. I heard a lot about, Marshawn Lattimore. I know it's only 2 games, but as of right now, through 2 games, they rank 31st DVOA versus the pass. So they aren't what they were last year, at least not as of yet. Maybe they get that back, but as of right now, they're not a good pass defense. So I do like Matt Ryan there. And then trying to think, I had another note about somebody else that one of you mentioned, and now it's just escaping my mind.
Carson Wentz.
I'm sure I'll come back to it. No, but it's not Carson Wentz. You want to talk about Carson Wentz?
Yeah, bro.
All right, talk about Carson Wentz.
If this is a straight GBP like quarterback, you don't play him in cash game. I mean, I think we all can agree that if you're playing cash game viable this week, it's Matt Ryan, Patrick Mahomes, or Cam Newton. Those are my 3 quarterbacks that are cash game viable. But for straight GPP, because Nelson Aguilar is so cheap on FanDuel and DraftKings, I love the stack of Carson Wentz and him. But with Carson Wentz coming back, I can see people being scared of playing him. But you guys got to realize this guy's been practicing with the team for a month now. And the coach just came out and said today a report that said that he looked really sharp in practice in the last 2 weeks and that he's looked good and that he's ready to go. You're not going to roll out Carson Wentz out there if you don't think he's ready.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, they probably could have rolled him out 2 weeks ago, but they decided to take their time with him. And we're forgetting this is a quarterback that, I mean, last year his upside was like, I think he got 30 points one game, 28 points, 25 points, 21, 32 points. I mean, this guy can fling it. It's just like people forget about these kind of guys,
Definitely.
So, and they have the thing that Vegas is telling me that they're going to score. And with Ajayi being out, I think they're going to become more of like a passing game because Ajayi is a good runner. And don't get me wrong, Clement's a good, okay runner, but he's more of a receiving kind of hybrid running back, kind of like a Brian Westbrook. I don't know why I just used that. I mean, maybe because the Eagles, but I don't know. But
throwback.
Wentz, and they have a 27 implied total, so that tells you a little something that, Vegas sees them scoring. So I think I'm going to have some Carson Wentz and GPPs just to be like a little bit under owned and, it's a cheap stack. And you can play Zach Ertz too.
Good stuff.
I
Good
like that
stuff.
call.
We do have a question. I'll go to Tim with this question. A question on Facebook. What do you think of Joe Flacco this week?
No, I mean, I don't, I think that there's plenty of other options that I would rather play. I mean, I like some of his pass catchers. We'll get to that later, but I'm not really high on that game in general. I tend to target certain games that I think have a lot of upside or really cheap plays, and I don't think there's really too much in that game I'm interested in.
Agreed. And I remember what my note was. It was about Blake Bortles. People don't realize that he actually gets rushing yards as well. There's only 3 quarterbacks right now that have more rushing yards than him. That's Cam Newton, Tyrod Taylor, and Deshaun Watson. He's 4th right now. So he has that, good floor with the rushing yards as well.
And Ryan Tannehill, he can run too, guys.
Yep. And he showed last week. I think he ran for a big first down towards the end of that game. People hadn't seen him run in a while. They thought maybe he couldn't do it with that injury he had, but he looked good last week. So don't be scared to play him. All right. Unless you've got something else to talk about, we'll go ahead and move on to the tight end position. We'll start this time on DraftKings with Tim. Who are your elite tight ends this week?
Yeah, I think there's 2. I think they're both going to be pretty well owned for good reason, and that's going to be Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz. I think personally I'm leaning Travis Kelce, partly due to what Gerson said earlier, the 31-point implied total. He also has a 27% target share with Patrick Mahomes right now, who's just killing the game. Obviously, Ertz is Wentz's favorite target. Wentz's first game back, he's probably going to check down to him a lot. They both have excellent upside. And actually, compared to some of their raw target projections, they're underpriced compared to some of the wide receivers. So I think if you wanted a bit of a contrarian option, you could even play both of those 2 tight ends in GPPs.
Interesting little strategy there. I know you like to do that on DraftKings, especially with the 2 tight ends. All right, Gerson, let's go over to you with FanDuel. Who you got? Anybody besides those 2 guys you like?
No, I like those 2 guys. They're both good calls. I'll be honest with you. I don't pay. I think I say this like almost every week too. I never pay up for tight end. So I won more money than lost with not paying up for tight end. And the one guy that really, really stood out today, and we all know who he is, Eric Ebron. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah,
Eric?
That's right. Yep.
Eric Ebron. This guy have left a pretty sour taste in my mouth before, though. So I don't know how. I honestly don't know how he can fuck it up this week. So I mean, it's all there. We have a quarterback that loves throwing to tight end. I believe, if I remember correctly, I saw a post on Twitter that the Colts are the number one heaviest tight end pass, like friendly, I guess you could say. They catch the most balls in the league. And when you have a Jack Doyle, a guy that gets like a heavy exposure of target out, and you're the only tight end that's there. I mean, there's another one, but I don't know his name, and I don't care to know his name.
Right.
And Ebron is a touchdown machine. He's more like of a touchdown possession guy. And we've seen that he already has 2 touchdowns, right, in the first 2 weeks.
Right.
Yep. And he already had 13 points and 10 points. So, I mean,
they called a play for him in the red zone last week. I mean, it wasn't – he was the first look. They called that play for the fade to Ebron in the corner. So there's no doubt it's a big part of that offense.
Definitely.
I mean, what I look for is red zone touches and target, and that's what Ebron's going to eat. And he's 5,500 on FanDuel. That's so cheap for a tight end over there that's going to get the usage. I mean, like when we're paying up $7,000 and $7,500 for Ertz and Kelsey, I think I'd rather just go the Ebron road and play him. Other than that, I don't really see too many. I mean, you mentioned George Kittle, right, Tim?
Yeah. 2 other guys I do like, especially on DraftKings, more in the mid-range. George Kittle and Evan Ingram. I think that I like Kittle mainly because I expect him to be probably the top target other than Marquise Goodwin in that game. It's obviously a high point total for the game. I expect San Francisco to have to throw the ball a lot, and we know that he's got good chemistry. And plus, a lot of people got burned by him last week, so they won't be on him as much. I think that recency bias often gets guys off of players, and I also find like a lot of times players tends to go off the week after everybody plays them. So for that reason, I think that George Kittle could end up being a good GPP play. I think you nailed it though, Gerson. The chalk play, I think cash on DraftKings right now is going to be Ebron at tight end, and for good reason.
Yep, I agree. I just want to throw one more name in the hat, and I'm not going to take claim to this. If Dennis is watching the show right now, he actually is the one that pointed this out to me, and it's a good call. And that's Mark Andrews, the tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. He's a minimum price, $4,000 on FanDuel, and Hayden Hurst is ruled out for this game already. The first 2 games, he's got 4 targets, 3 receptions, not a whole lot of volume. He does have 1 touchdown, but he's playing against the Denver Broncos, who are terrible against the tight end. So Joe Flacco loves his tight end. So if Mark Andrews is the pass catching tight end there, then you can have a tournament play there for him as well. So I do like me some Mark Andrews as well as a pivot off Ebron. But Ebron I think will be the chalk for sure.
Hey, just a quick update on Evan Ingram. He was a full participant in practice today, so it does look like he should be good to go. And Texans are 30th DVOA against tight ends.
All right, good stuff there. Good stuff. I think we pretty much hit on all the tight ends, unless y'all have somebody else you wanted to talk about before we move on.
Nope.
All right. Gerson, you got somebody?
I mean, you can play Jordan Reed and Jimmy Graham. I mean, I think they're viable plays, but I probably won't have too much exposure to them. I think I'm going to stick to Eric Ebron, Zach Ertz, Kelsey, and Kittle.
All right, fair
the
enough.
guys I like to play on FanDuel.
All right, let's go ahead and jump now to the defenses here. We saved the running backs and receivers for the second half of the show. All right, so this week we've got pretty much all the top defenses play all the terrible offenses. I mean, you can pretty much close your eyes and pick a defense, and I think you're probably going to hit on a good one. We'll go to you first, Gerson, on FanDuel. Who is your defense? If you had to pick one defense this week, who is it?
Oh, if I had to pick one defense, I'm going all in on the Vikings, man. Obviously, Vikings have a really good matchup. I mean, I think right now they're like minus 17 versus Buffalo. To give you an idea, I mean, I played DFS for 4 years now. I've never seen a minus 17. I swear I've never had. I've never even seen it in basketball, I swear. And that's like, actually I have the Golden State Warriors, but, yeah, it's just kind of incredible. A minus 17, that's a pretty big blowout. And we know this defense can cause turnovers. And if you look at last year, they did have like 20-point game, 17-point game, 15-point game. So their upside is there. One thing I want to take away from this is that me and Tim have discussed it, and people have asked us questions on the Facebook group, the DFS Roundtable, and they say, "Oh, I don't for defense." When a defense is 4,300, if I were to tell you there was a wide receiver out there that was going to get you 20-point upside, you'll play him, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Good
Don't
point.
think of the defense as a position that can't score if they're in a good position, because they can score. And if they get 2 touchdowns or a touchdown, which I think is pretty viable, I think it's pretty possible that they get a touchdown this week.
Yep.
They can get you 20 points. And so for 4,300 for 20 points, that's almost 4.25 value. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I'm just making up a number, but you know, I'm all over the Vikings defense. Any other than that, I mean, I can see the Jaguars play. They're 5,000 on FanDuel. I mean, they're right next to the Vikings, but it's only if Blaine Gabbert plays and Mariota sits. And I don't think Mariota's going to play. I honestly think he won't play for the next couple of weeks because it looks like it's pretty serious. But I like the Jaguars defense to go under-owned because of that Vikings defense that's going to be heavily owned.
All right, good stuff. All right, Tim, is there anybody else besides Jacksonville and Minnesota you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I think probably one of the highest defenses. I'm going to mainly be in on 3 defenses this week. I think will make up the majority of my allocations. One of them, Gerson just mentioned, is the Vikings. Another one we'll get to here in a second. And then probably my main defense, or at least my cash defense as of right now, is the Chicago Bears. You get an $800 savings over the Vikings. They are on the road, but they're against the Arizona Cardinals, who just have not been able to move the ball at all. We saw what they did against Seattle on Monday night. Their pressure right now is just unbelievable. I think that they also have pretty high sack expectations, and shot at a touchdown. So I think that if you're wanting to pay up for defense and you can't quite get up to the Vikings or the Jaguars, you can get a good option with the Bears at 3,500.
Yep, good stuff, good stuff. And I know the defense you're talking about that you want to mention. We'll go to Tim first. We'll just stay with you there on DraftKings. Let's go ahead and get your value defense because I know what it is already.
Yeah, I think one of the big decisions this week is going to be, as Gerson just said, whether or not you pay up for defense. Because as enticing as the Vikings are at 4,300 and the 20-plus point upside that they have, for almost half of that price, 2,200, you can get the Cowboys defense against Seattle. Now, again, they're on the road, but the Cowboys are tied among the top leaders right now in the league among pressures on the quarterback. Russell Wilson, we know that the offensive line is terrible. I usually don't recommend road underdogs for defenses, but the biggest correlation with defensive scoring is pressure on the quarterback. Dallas is killing that right now, and everybody knows Seattle's offensive line is terrible. So if you are looking for a play that doesn't have the floor of the Vikings but still has a higher ceiling than other plays in that range, I think you could do worse. It's going to be who you're going to spend that money on, right? What are you going to do with the $2,100 that you're using to come down off the Vikings, or the $1,300 to come off the Bears? If you're not putting that money to good use, then it doesn't matter. You're better off paying up. So. Yep,
agreed. Is there any other defense that you want to mention, Gerson? That's a cheap defense. We got a couple questions on Facebook. People are mentioning the Cardinals defense, the Chiefs defense at home, because they are a better defense at home. Any of those guys you like down there?
Okay. Kansas City Chiefs doesn't have a defense. I don't care what anyone says. I'm telling you right now, they are the worst defense in the league. So I'm sorry, whoever said it on Facebook. Please don't play the Kansas City Chiefs. There's a reason why Vegas has that game that high. I mean,
agreed.
That defense is awful. I'm just not a big fan of the Cardinals. I don't think they force enough turnovers and sacks and interceptions to get me enticed to play them. But the one defense I am looking at, and I already mentioned it earlier on. Actually, I haven't mentioned it. Have I? Have I talked about Andrew Luck? Nope. So Andrew Luck is facing the Eagles, and the Eagles' offensive line versus the Colts' offensive line versus the defensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles is the biggest mismatch of the week for defensive line rating. They're at minus 44% according to Pro Football Focus. And one thing I love doing every week is I always love targeting those lines that have upside that can get sacks and force fumbles. And last week I kind of saw that, and I played the Buccaneers defense at 2,200, and they met value. They got 7 points. So if I can get the Philadelphia Eagle at a very low price of 4,400 on FanDuel, I don't know what they are on DraftKings, but I think pretty sure they're not that they're like probably like what?
Trying to see on DraftKings.
What are they at?
They are at 3,000.
Yeah, Eagles are 3K.
3K.
Yep.
I mean, I think I don't mind that, but I don't think Cowboys are the best value defense, and it's not even close because that upside that Tim just mentioned is the best value defense. But if I want to get cute with it, I guess I'll play the Eagles defense.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, can I do 3 real quick here?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. So you made a good point. Was Facebook. I've seen a lot of people talking about 3 defenses, and 2 of them I'm going to mention real quick, and that's the Cardinals and the Dolphins. Okay, both of those defenses you're looking at because they're cheap, they're savings, and they probably have, some expectation of sacks. But I think that those game scripts for you to be able to have a ceiling type day is really narrow. And I usually don't like to play, regardless of position, anything that I think has a narrow game script. So if you're telling me that the Cardinals or the Dolphins get 12 or 14 points, the only way that happens is, fumble, taken back for a touchdown. You're not going to get 6 sacks. You're not going to get multiple fumble recoveries or interceptions. So I think you're banking on 1 pick 6 for a Cardinals defense to pay off. And I think that's just such an expectation to put on somebody. And I feel the same way about the only other defense I want to mention is the Texans, and that's because they get Clowney back. It's their home opener, and they're facing Eli and the Giants, which has maybe the worst offensive line in the league. We know the Texans burned a lot of people last week, so most people, again, will be off of them because they got burned. But I think the scenario here is completely different. So I think that if you want somebody in the mid-range, if I'm looking for somebody to pivot off of, say, the Dolphins, I like the Texans much more.
Definitely. I actually picked up the Dolphins in my season-long league because I had the Saints, and I didn't think the Saints would do very good this week. So I'm hoping the Dolphins can do a little something there. But I agree with you. I think that you're looking for sacks, interceptions, and I don't think that those defenses give that upside. Just one note on the Cowboys that I had. They actually have given up the 4th fewest yards so far this season, and they're 2nd in sacks with 9 sacks on the year. So great stuff there for the Cowboys. So love that. Love that call.
I wanted to mention another thing. Sean Lee is questionable right now. I mean, I saw him on the injury. What was that?
I said good call. Yep.
So I saw him on the injury report. If Sean Lee is out, I am off the Cowboys. Sean Lee is the heart and soul of that defense. And without him last year, I'm pretty sure we all remember how awful the Cowboys were without him. I mean, people talk about being horrible without Zeke. Oh, it was more. More they were horrible because they were out without Sean Lee.
Yep.
That's a great call.
So make sure you keep an eye on that report.
Definitely. All right, good stuff here. All right, we're going to take a break here really quick, and when we come back, we'll talk about the money positions, the running backs and the wide receivers, so hang tight.
Fantasy football. It's not just a social interaction anymore. Today's manager plays to win, and the difference between winning and losing is so small, a manager will do whatever it takes to get an edge. Yet the other sites offer the same content at an extremely high cost. It's time to get away from the old and step into the future of fantasy stats. This is StatRoute. StatRoute allows you to find any data set for any player or team in 7 seconds or less, all on a simple, easy-to-use application. Want to see which running back performed best in the snow last season? How about the past 5 seasons? And in the 4th quarter? Or maybe you're unsure of which quarterback to start for the upcoming week. With our Stats IP technology, you can now quickly see how Matt Stafford has performed in the rain, during the second half of the season, in New York, compared with how Russell Wilson has played during primetime games, at home, versus the Rams' new defensive coordinator, Wade Phillips. At StatRoute, it's our mission to deliver state-of-the-art technology guaranteed to keep you ahead of the curve. So, whether you're a casual football fan, a weekly fantasy trash talker, or a DFS hustler, we've got you covered. Welcome to the new standard for stats delivery. We are StatRoute. Take back your league.
Introducing Phantom of the Dark, walk through my heaven with levitation.
All right, guys, welcome back. Of course, we are available tomorrow morning. We'll be available on all the podcast networks, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and TuneIn Radio. So if you missed anything, you can definitely catch us on the audio version. And we're also available video version on YouTube if you want to catch us on YouTube as well. Once this is done, it'll post to YouTube. All right, guys, let's get to the money positions now. We'll start with the running backs first, and we'll start with you, Gerson, on FanDuel. Who are your elite running backs this week?
Well, before we do anything, take this moment and give a special shout out to the Cleveland Browns on their first win last night.
Dilly.
And in honor of that, we got Dilly right here for him, for the Baker Mayfield, the number 1 draft pick in Going for 2 podcast. Dilly.
Yeah, good stuff. Just to give some background, if y'all haven't listened to the podcast for a while, we did a NFL draft podcast in early April, so nearly a month before the actual NFL draft. When no one was talking about Baker Mayfield going number 1 overall, we had, I think, 6 of my writers on. Gerson and Tim were both on, and basically give them a team that they have a team they're drafting for. Gerson had the Cleveland Browns he was drafting for. He picked Baker Mayfield number 1 overall, and we got killed for it. I mean, people are on Twitter like, we're not going to follow you anymore. This is BS. You're doing it all wrong. And of course, NFL draft comes and they take Baker Mayfield. You be damn sure I went back on Twitter and found all those tweets, and I tweeted out that we had called it a month earlier. So shout out to Gerson for that call, and they get their first win last night. So good stuff. All right, Gerson, let's talk about some running backs now.
Sorry about that, guy. I had to throw that in. But anyway, let's get to the running back. So, on FanDuel, there's a tier of running back, top tier, which involves Todd Gurley, Alvin Kamara, Melvin Gordon, and Ezekiel Elliott. But I think the guy that I really want to play this week is going to be on both sides. I'm going to play him probably my heaviest. Alvin Kamara, he faces a team that just allowed 15 targets, 14 receptions, 104 yards to Christian McCaffrey. In that game, it's a 53.5 over and under. So I want heavy exposure on him. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like Kamara is a better running back, a better runner, even though he doesn't run the ball as much as probably CMC, but he just has a better offensive line, better game script, better over and under. I mean,
Agreed.
I can see, we know his ceiling. This guy just got a 35-point game according to FanDuel scoring, 2 weeks ago, 38-point game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, facing Atlanta, who just lost Keon Neal and, what's his name? No. Keon Neal and Dion Lewis?
Yep.
Or Dion?
Dion something.
Lewis.
No, it's not Dion Lewis. I can't think of his name right now either.
Something's Dion, but, I swear I'm not drunk. Yeah, Dion Jones. But I love Kamara this week, and I know he's expensive on DraftKings, but he's actually cheap on FanDuel. He's $8,700. So, I know that's not cheap, but you know what I mean. That's a $600 difference from Todd Gurley.
Yep.
So I love Kamara this week. It's just, he's my top running back. I'm pretty sure Tim will touch on the other top running back, which is, are you going to touch on Todd Gurley, Tim?
Yeah. Well, okay. I think more than anything this week, it's just going to come down to a number of decisions, and I think specifically decisions between a couple of guys at the running back position. I agree with Gerson, especially with the full PPR scoring. I'm going to be heavier on Kamara than I will Gurley, but I definitely understand wanting to get, plenty of Gurley exposure. So those are definitely the 2 top guys. I think we're going to need to spend a lot of time on the mid-range.
All right, yeah, good stuff. And I'm going to throw Ezekiel Elliott in there only because of one reason, and it's probably a terrible reason, but I've been on 4 different projection sites, and he's the number 2 projected points getter in all 4 of those sites. I guess they're predicting that he's going to get a ton of volume there. It's a little bit risky. I wouldn't play it in cash, obviously. It's more of a GPP kind of play, but that Seattle defense is pretty terrible, and if the Dallas Cowboys can do anything at all defensively, Zeke can get some easy touchdowns. So I'm just going to put him out there.
Great correlation with the defense. Good call.
All right, good stuff. All right, let's go to DraftKings. Tim first. Let's go with your mid-tier here.
Yeah, this is a pretty crowded area, especially with some of the value that broke to me. To me, there's really 5 guys that you're deciding between, and really for me it's 4, but I'm going to go ahead and name all 5 because I think they're all in play. Jordan Howard for the Bears, Kevin Coleman for the Falcons, Kareem Hunt, Gio Bernard, and then Latavius Murray. So obviously with Dalvin Cook being out, Murray obviously moves into that range with the other guys. Gio obviously because of Mixon, and then Hunt because of the high total. He hasn't, as Gerson mentioned, been used very much in the pass game at all, and he also hasn't scored any touchdowns on the ground. But whenever you have a point total like that, a running back at home that's projected to win, you always want some of those shares. So I really like Hunt. Obviously, we know what Gio can do through the air. Tevin Coleman, again, he has a high point matchup. So I think those 5 guys are really going to be who you're going to be building a lot of your lineups around. And it's just who you like best as the guy to pair with, I assume, Kamara, and the guy we'll mention here in a minute, as in your cash games.
Definitely. All right, Gerson, what about over on FanDuel? Who are your mid-tiers over in FanDuel?
Oh, well, just to confirm, he said Tevin Coleman, Kareem Hunt, Jordan Howard, and who are the other 2 guys again?
Gio Bernard and Latavius Murray.
Gio, yeah. Just like he mentioned, all those guys. What was that?
Yeah, how do you feel about those guys?
I feel great about all those guys. I mean, I love all those calls. One guy that's not getting a lot of love, and he should be getting some love, is Christian McCaffrey. I mean, everybody is going to be off him because of all the value. And that's the thing. I have to throw this out this week. While we said very tough position to kind of narrow down this week because you have to pick which way you want to go, running back is just harder. I think running back is the hardest position this week because you can go so many different ways. And I mentioned it earlier on in our chat row. I said a lot of people are getting off Tevin Coleman, and I don't know why. I don't want to get off Tevin Coleman. I'm going to stay on him. I'm going to ride him out. I really, really love Tevin Coleman. I have a note right here. Tevin Coleman has received 2/3 of the Atlanta backfield work last week, and he has the most rushing attempt inside the 10-yard line with Atlanta right now. And I can see him getting lower percentage now because of all those values that opened up. But if Tevin Coleman in that high-scoring game gets 3 or 2 touchdowns, I mean, let's be honest here. Last week was a highway robbery by none other than Matt Ryan. I mean, if he's not destroying Julio Jones' value, he's destroying Tevin Coleman's value too, you know. He got 2 rushing touchdowns. And in this game, while I believe the New Orleans Saints, I think they're ranked 31st in DVOA in rushing right now, if I'm correct. I mean, they're pretty bad.
They're bad overall,
so,
yep.
I love Tevin Coleman. I love McCaffrey. I mean, he has 24 targets, 20 receptions, and the Bengals have allowed the most opponent plays per game this season. So if you're going to give me a higher pace with McCaffrey there, I can see him getting that high upside. You know, I mean, this guy just barely got a 30-point game without a touchdown. So on DraftKings, I mean, on FanDuel, I think that wasn't a 30-point game. Obviously, on FanDuel, it's like 20-point game. But still, I mean, I love McCaffrey. I'm going to be on him too. But I love that Kareem Hunt call, bro. I mean, like, he's going to be so under-owned on DraftKings. And, I mean, he's going to be heavily owned on – I think he's a cash game viable. I might be wrong, but I like him. But on FanDuel, it's a little harder, though, because he's $7,900.
He's expensive, yeah,
So,
definitely.
On FanDuel, it's a little harder. So that's why I'm trying in the mid-tier. I put on my spreadsheet. I want Tevin Coleman and what's his name? I just flipped over. Sorry, guys.
You got
Tevin Coleman and Jordan Howard in that mid-range are probably moving my heaviest own. Yeah, and Gio falls down more of a value tier on my on FanDuel because he's 6,400.
Oh, okay.
So because FanDuel is priced differently. Like I understand DraftKings, but like that's the thing about FanDuel. Some of these guys they make them like that. But another guy I was looking at because we didn't mention him, Kenyon Drake, 6,800 on FanDuel. I mean, facing the Oakland Raiders. Raiders just barely allowed Philip Lindsay go for 100 and something yards and like a touchdown, I believe. And missing him, Royce Freeman, who was my sick call of the week last week. I thought he was going to get the bulk of the carry. Next thing I know, I have this guy with like a Jufro and running the ball. I'm like, who is this guy? And then, I mean, I knew who he was, but I didn't know he was that good. But I don't know how you guys feel about it. Maybe Jeff can give me a little bit more background because he's in that area. Chris Thompson against Green Bay. That's going to be a very sneaky game. I wouldn't be shocked if that game they have to catch up and just pass the ball. But he's 6,500 on FanDuel, so that's very cheap for a running back. I mean, I understand it's a non-PPR website, but 6,500 for a run. I mean, he gets touchdowns. He just receiving touchdowns, you know? I mean, they're still the same thing, touchdowns, you know?
Yep. Yeah, no, I definitely like Chris Thompson because AP has throughout his entire career hasn't been much of a passing down back. And again, this year he's not catching very many passes. They do love Chris Thompson there. And of course, we got the check down captain right there, Mr. Alex Smith will check down quite a bit to Thompson. You know, Thompson and Jordan Reed seem to be the check down people for Alex Smith. So love me some Thompson this week. He should get a ton of volume with his catches. And again, if the Packers get up big, which is definitely possible, they'll have to pass to catch up, and it'll be Chris Thompson getting all of that work. So good call on Thompson. Y'all pretty much took all my calls for the mid tier there, so I'm not going to add anybody to those. Let's go ahead and jump into the value, and Gerson, we'll go back to you with the values over on FanDuel.
I think, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Everybody knows it. Latavius Murray, like, he already mentioned it, but on FanDuel, he's 5,200. Great correlation with the Vikings defense. I'm probably, like, if I were playing on FanDuel, I would lock in Latavius Murray and Vikings defense because that upside you can get on that stack is very high. And then Corey Clement, I'm pretty sure Tim probably want to touch him more because of, well, he nailed it last week along with, I mean, you guys teamed up. I don't know what you guys did. You guys teamed up on me, something like that. But there's one guy I kind of want to throw in, but I'll save that one for the sixth call of the night.
All right. Good stuff. All right, Tim, is there anybody on DraftKings that he hasn't mentioned? And did you want to mention Corey Clement again?
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, I expect he's going to be the highest owned player on the board, certainly the highest owned running back, I think. I mean, at that kind of value, he's expected to get, 70-ish% of the running back touches at 4,300. You almost got to play him in cash. I think obviously you can pivot off in GPP and do 3 of the guys I named earlier, or 2 of them in Kamara, and get some, different lineups there. The only other guy I want to mention, and this one, again, is kind of a punt call, but it'll, be lower ownership. It's going to be Wilkins for the Colts. I think, obviously, with Marlon Mack out, he's going to get them expected to get anyway the majority of the touches this week. Jordan Wilkins at 3,700. So not much of a savings over Corey Clement, but, every dollar is important this week. And I think that, obviously not for cash, but kind of a GPP pivot if you need the extra money.
Yep, definitely, yeah. And Marlon Mack's already been ruled out, so yeah, that's a good call there. I think he's more of the first and second down back. They do have Neiman Hines to come in as the passing down back, but I think Wilkins is your overall better play there. So good stuff there. All right, let's jump over to the wide receivers now, and we'll go to you.
Did we mention Giovanni Bernard? We did, right?
Yeah. Tim touched on
it. Okay, he's a top value. I'm just letting everybody know that.
Definitely.
Hey, real quick before we move on. So of the 5 guys that I mentioned earlier, Howard, Coleman, Hunt, Gio, and Latavius Murray on DraftKings, if you had to take one of those 5 out, who would it be?
If I had to take one of those 5 out, I am taking out probably Gio. I just think the matchup is not as good as some of the other guys on that list. That's just my opinion. What do you think, Gerson?
You said Howard. I'm taking out Hunt.
Taking out Hunt because the expense on FanDuel. You're right. He's a little more expensive. Maybe I'd probably go Hunt too because he's almost in the elite tier on FanDuel.
Yeah. Certainly on FanDuel, I agree. I think on DraftKings, I'm probably going to keep Hunt, Gio, Murray, and Coleman, and the guy I'm probably going to have the lowest exposure to is going to be Howard.
Yep. Good call. All right. Good stuff. All right, let's go to wide receivers now, and we'll start with you this time, Gerson. Who you got for your elite receivers?
So, a little fun fact, just want to throw it out there. Michael Thomas is my number one, well, besides him being my number one wide receiver, Michael Thomas has 28 receptions. The Buffalo Bills' whole entire wide receiver crew, they have 29. That's pretty sad.
That is pretty sad.
Laquan Treadwell, who was drafted in the same class as Michael Thomas, his career reception, 29. And that's in 3 years that he's been playing in the NFL.
Terrible.
That's pretty sad, too.
Terrible.
But anyways, those were some fun facts. The other things I wanted to touch on Michael Thomas, like for real, a real stat for you guys. After going 116 reception, 180, 1 touchdown, I mean, he killed the Browns too. I mean, he got 12 receptions, 89 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, this guy is starting to become kind of like a touchdown machine, kind of like heavy play through him. With Mark Ingram out, we can see touchdown going elsewhere, and they're going to Michael Thomas. Right now, it's just he's a locked-in play with me. One of the things that I love doing on FanDuel and Draftkings, both websites for wide receivers, I like to favor road wide receivers in an underdog high-scoring game, and Michael Thomas fits that bill. And I think while Drew Brees struggles on the road, Michael Thomas is in a very good spot. While he might be the most expensive in both sites, I think you'll probably draw him at a lower ownership because people will pivot to, well, the next guy Tim will probably talk about.
All right, so let's go ahead and go to DraftKings, Tim. Michael Thomas, obviously, is probably a good pick on DraftKings as well, but who else do you like over there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Michael Thomas is not going to be as highly owned as the next 2 guys. One of them is obviously Tyreek Hill. He's the second highest wide receiver on the slate, and for good reason. Yeah, Ty Freak, exactly. Again, he's in the highest over-under game of the week. We know that he just has the ability to score at any time. He gets a huge target share from Pat Mahomes. When you look at just his targets, you're thinking 8,500. He's only gotten 14 targets compared to Michael Thomas, but this dude can take every single target to the house. So he's definitely in play this week. And then the guy that I'm probably the highest on DraftKings is going to be Julio Jones. He was, cleared healthy today. And I think that going into the week, Matt Ryan, he traditionally kills the Saints as well. His target share on the year is just incredibly high. So I think Julio Jones is I don't believe hardly any player is a lock, maybe Corey Clement, but I definitely think Julio Jones is pretty close to a lock for me this week.
Yeah, good stuff. The only other guy I wanted to add to that list is Stephon Diggs. He's going to be a little bit under-owned because of some of the guys you just mentioned. I'm trying to look up some stats here real quick. Hold on. So he's going up against Buffalo, obviously a terrible defense. The only thing you got to worry about here is a blowout potential. If they end up being up big in the fourth quarter, they may run the ball out. So Diggs could suffer a little bit. But over the first two weeks, he's got 19 targets. So we know Cousins like to go to him. He had 13 targets in that game against Green Bay. So Diggs is kind of a sneaky play if everybody's playing Julio or Mike Thomas or Tyreek Hill. You can pull out Diggs and he'd be a low ownership guy for your tournaments there. So he's the only other one that I had on my list.
Nobody mentioning DeAndre Hopkins or?
All right. Well, you just mentioned him, so let's talk about him. Go ahead.
Okay, I thought you guys were going to mention him. I'm like, damn it. DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, like I said earlier on, Janoris Jenkins got poured up by the Cowboys wide receiver line wide receivers, and they allowed, hold on, I have it right here, 105 yards and a touchdown to Tavon Austin and their wide receiver little line crew, whatever you want to call them, group. And while I don't fear that Cowboys, fear Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins. And DeAndre Hopkins last week made me a lot of money, so I'm going back to the wells, and I'm going to have a lot of Hopkins. I love those 3 other calls you guys mentioned. I think those are going to be the highest owned wide receivers. I really, really like Tyreek Hill this week. There's just incredible what he's doing right now. I mean, with Mahomes, him and Mahomes, in all their games that they played together, they have like a total like 490 yards together so far. So something special is going on there. And with Mahomes having that arm, it kind of tells you, Tyreek Hill, he can legit. I would not be shocked if one day we come back next week and say, did you guys see that 300 yards?
Yeah.
not passing game, but receiving game from Tyreek Hill, you know?
Yep.
Like, this guy and that arm that he has, I mean, I love the Tyreek call.
Yeah, and Tyreek on FanDuel is actually the 7th highest priced wide receiver, so he's easier to fit in your lineups. He's the second highest price over on DraftKings, so a little bit easier to fit on FanDuel. So,
One last note on Tyreek. I think Adam Levitan had the stat that he had caught, 44 out of 46 of his passes, too. So his catch rate is also insanely high, in addition to his average depth of target. So just crazy numbers with Tyreek.
Overall, he's just a freak. That's just all you can say about him, really. All right, let's go. Let's go to the mid tier here. I forgot who I started with, so I'm just going to pick Gerson. Gerson, go with your mid tier.
So on FanDuel, I kind of hate like mid tier because if you go to mid tier prices, people think like 7,900 and below, but there's not a lot of guys that I really like that much price. You guys already mentioned some of them. Stephon Diggs, I like him on FanDuel at 8,300, but I mean, that's 8,300. That's not like 7,900 and below, but the only guy I'm looking at really in that tier is, T.Y. Hilton at 7,500. And right now, basically with Doyle being out, he's been lining up in the slot too. So he's getting those little short yardage passes from Luck. He usually always on the outside, but like since Luck's arm is all messed up in all sorts of ways. And I think he has like one of the lowest ADOT per attempt or something like that, like this year. So T.Y. Hilton and no Doyle, I see him getting more target and more reception. The touchdown does worry me on FanDuel, but I think he can get that one touchdown. That'd be great at 7,500. The other guy I was looking at, and we already mentioned him, Nelson Aguilar with Carson Wentz at 6,600. I think he's a very good stack and a very low-owned stack, too. But Nelson Aguilar, I mean, his guy's been doing really great last couple of weeks, and I'm kind of dumb for not really playing him too much. And I just hate it because here's Jeff over here freaking playing him every week and winning money, and I'm like, well, I know I'm winning money, but shit, Nelson Aguilar, I'd be winning more money. But I like him. Like I said on FanDuel, they don't really have a mid-range price wide receiver I love, but other than that, it just gets lower and lower of other wide receivers I want to target on FanDuel.
We have a question on Facebook, and it said we'll just stay on you, Gerson. If you had to pick one of these two guys, Emmanuel Sanders or Demaryius Thomas, which of the two you like better?
Neither. No, if I had to pick one, it depends on what site it is, because if it's DraftKings, I want Sanders. If it's FanDuel, I want Demaryius Thomas for the touchdown upside. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Emmanuel Sanders, because last week I was watching that Raiders game, and I saw some limping out of Demaryius Thomas. So I don't know if he was on the injury report or not, but he kind of looked a little bit slow too. Like, I think he's just getting old.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to like say it like that, but it's just like, I know these players, like, we all think about it like, oh wow, Eli Manning, man, he should retire. But if you really think about it, that was 16 years ago now, or like 15. I don't know how many years it was exactly, but that's when I first actually started getting into the NFL. So I'm like, shit, I'm getting old too, you know? But I think
I agree, Sanders.
Yep, agree. Okay. All right, let's go over to mid-tier on DraftKings. Who you got, Tim?
Well, one of the guys we just touched on, Emmanuel Sanders. Gerson touched on the other guy. I think my favorite guy in the mid-tier is T.Y. Hilton, especially once Jack Doyle was ruled out. I think he already sees 11 targets a game. I don't know he can see much more, or you can project him for much more. But I do think that luck is going to go to him early and often, so you got to consider him. Emmanuel Sanders, again, I think two reasons. I think he looks like, you know, as Gerson just mentioned, the better player at this point. Demaryius Thomas has had some issues with some drops this year. But more than anything, it's that Sanders gets easily the best matchup in Baltimore. Their slot corner is how you beat them. So I think that they're going to target him early and often. And then the other guy that I like in the mid-range is Will Fuller.
Will Fuller.
Earlier he talked about DeAndre Hopkins, and don't get me wrong, I love DeAndre Hopkins, but Eli Apple, who's already a notoriously bad number 2 corner, is out this week. And so now they're looking at starting B.W. Webb, who is just terrible, and a college free agent at cornerback. I think that the Texans, I mean, don't get me wrong, DeAndre Hopkins' target share is incredible, and he's going to get his targets. But I think if you get Will Fuller at a significant discount against one of the best cornerback matchups in the league, he certainly is in play for me, and I will have a lot of him.
Just double stack it. Double stack it. Do it.
Oh, yeah. All the
Double
guys.
stack it.
Double stack. All right, yeah, good stuff. I like that Will Fuller call too. He's got that big play potential as well, which you like in a receiver. He can basically get value on one big play if he can catch that long touchdown. So yeah, good stuff there. And I do like the stack there with Deshaun Watson. And yeah, double stack it if you want. I mean, it could end up being good. I mean, if you had it last week, you were good because both of them were amazing last week. So good stuff there. I don't have any to add to the list. Y'all took all mine. The one I did have was Aguilar, which Gerson already talked about. The Eagles receiving core right now is basically a bunch of ragtags. I mean, they just signed Jordan Matthews this week, who they were cut, and then it was cut from a bunch of other teams. And he may get the start this week. Yeah, he may get
girls pregnant.
So I'm just definitely not. I'm not a fan of any of the receivers there except for Aguilar and of course Ertz at tight end. So that's definitely a good call there. I think you can get all the volume. All right, let's go to value plays, and we'll go back to you, Tim, with your values over on DraftKings.
Yeah, so one guy I'm going to have a lot in my lineups, and I think he'll probably be in a lot of lineups overall, is going to be Cooper Kupp. He's 4,900, which I think is underpriced in this matchup. His touchdown or red zone equity is incredibly high for his position. I just think he's a great play, especially at his price point. Another guy that I really want to kind of spend a little time on and get you guys' opinion, because I think that it's going to be a decision a lot of people, especially on DraftKings, are making this week. And that's going to be Tyler Boyd versus Calvin Ridley. I think Tyler Boyd this week is going to be very highly owned because of his, coming off his performance last week, his target share, and then, his price. I mean, at 3,700, he's a huge value if he gets the type of targets that he's been seeing thus far. So I think right now I'm leading Boyd. He's playing more snaps and getting more targets, but he's also in the lower projected games. So, and like I said, I also really like Julio. So wanted you guys' opinions on that.
Yeah, well, you kind of took mine because I had Ridley as my sick call of the week before you said you were going to talk about him as a value. So I love me Ridley. I think it's kind of funny because they can't find a way to get Julio Jones the ball in the red zone. And what does Ridley do last week? Catches a red zone touchdown. So it's kind of crazy that, you got Julio out there. We can't score in the red zone, but we get Ridley out there on his first red zone attempt, and he gets a touchdown. So I do like Ridley as a pivot off of Boyd. But yeah, I like Boyd as well. I think he's be very chalky. So if you want to pivot off of him in a tournament, I think Ridley is a good way to go. All right, Gerson, What you got over on FanDuel for your values?
So I just want to add to Tyler Boyd. I mean, he's a great play. He's only seen one target less fewer than A.J. Green, if that tells you how good involved he's been, or like how involved he's been. And that's only on playing 81%. Well, not only, but he's playing 81% of the snap. So I see him as a great value. And Carolina pass defense ranked as a bottom 10 defense. So I like it. And in bottom 10 defense in slot for like yards and touchdowns allowed.
Yep.
So sorry, I didn't mean to make them seem like a bad defense. They're not a bad defense, but in the slot they are. So I really like that call. And damn it, you stole like my favorite play that I wanted to talk about. Cooper Kupp, man. I'm so excited to play him this week. I'm going to play him so much on FanDuel and DraftKings. I don't know, man. I'm going to watch that game just for Cooper Kupp. I mean, the guy, he played in 97% of the snap. He has the fifth most slot yards with wideout this year, and at least 5 receptions and 50 yards in both games. And the other thing is, he's a red zone target. That's the best part.
Yep.
He's the third leading receiver in red zone look. And last year, he was also a top red zone look guy. So that tells me something that Goff likes to throw the Kupp in the red zone, or McVay just like drawing up those little crazy-ass plays that he does. And Kupp magically always finds the red zone. So I love his price on FanDuel and DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's 6,300, I believe, if I'm right. I just saw it. 6,300. Am I right?
Yep, I think so.
Yep, 6,300, and on DraftKings he's 4,900. That's so cheap. Two other guys I want to touch on, but prepare yourself, hold yourself, don't turn off the podcast.
Baker Mayfield.
No, we can't play him. Damn it. Larry Fitzgerald. I'm gonna be playing Larry Fitzgerald on DraftKings and FanDuel. I think more on DraftKings because I think I'll get him at a very low owned, and he practiced in full. And if there's any week that I want to get Larry Fitzgerald is when he's really cheap, and he's dirt cheap on DraftKings. I mean, for a guy what his upside is, I know Sam Bradford's awful, but I don't think he can get any worse. I guess you can say, but just give me Larry Fitzgerald at I think he's 50. He's not even. What is he on DraftKings right now?
I'm looking now.
Oh, 5,400. I mean, the last time he was 5,400 on DraftKings, I mean, I think he got let's see. I don't know. I can't find it. I'm on FanDuel actually, so I can't exactly quote that. But I know he's been cheap before, and I've taken advantage of that. The other guy I want to touch on is Allen Robinson. I know people say he's going to be covered by what's his name, Patrick Peterson. I'm one of those firm believers. I don't think Patrick Peterson is an elite cornerback. And when I say elite cornerback, a shutdown cornerback, I just think he's a good cornerback. But he's not a bad cornerback. Like, he's not going to shut you down. I've seen him get burned by many receivers many times. So I like Allen Robinson for the target that he got. I mean, he pulled in about 12 targets on Monday Night Football, I believe. So Allen Robinson, and he pulled in 14 targets, 10 receptions, 83 yards, and Mitchell Trubisky, I thought the shutdown king was going to Derek Carr, but I think I'm going to have to give it to Mitchell Trubisky now. So on DraftKings, he makes a good play along with that. But other than those guys, you can't go any cheaper with Tyler Boyd and all those guys. But
Definitely.
that's it.
Definitely. I agree with you on Allen Robinson. And just a stat real quick that I have on him is Arizona this year so far against number one wide receivers is actually ranked 23rd. So if you're afraid of Patrick Peterson, he's been middle of the pack. He's not terrible, but he's been middle of the pack so far this year. So I wouldn't be afraid to play Allen Robinson. We saw last week, I think Robinson had 10 targets in the first half. That's just crazy volume. Trubisky loves him. I wish he would throw the ball down the field more to him instead of those little underneath passes. But I'll take it, especially on FanDuel. Especially on DraftKings. I think he's 5,400 on DraftKings, and you get that point per reception on there. So I love him over on the DraftKings side. All right, Tim, let's go to actually, we already went to you with your values, right?
Yeah, can I mention actually one other guy here?
Sure.
I think it's sometimes as important to, as a guy that you play, as a guy that you fade. And one guy I think that's getting a lot of talk this week that's a big fade for me is going to be Geronimo Allison. I was on him a lot last week because of the fact that Devontae Adams was going to be seeing a lot of Xavier. He was going to get more targets. But now that his price has come up, a lot of people don't know that Josh Norman doesn't really shadow like he used to. He stays on one side, and the side that he stays on is the side that Allison runs the majority of his routes on. So not that Josh Norman is, again, any kind of a shutdown corner, but you definitely don't want to take a guy who I think has a higher the guy that's not in the better matchup. The better matchup this week is going to be Devontae Adams on the other side against Quentin Dunbar. So if you're big on Allison this week, I would definitely scale back some of my allocation.
All right, good stuff. Good note there. And in case you didn't notice, he's wearing a Packers jersey, so he watches them pretty closely. So if he's fading Allison, I'm fading Allison too. All right, it's time for Stacking the Box.
Talk a little bit about stacking.
Pass catching running backs, tight ends, wide receiver ones or twos, whatever it is.
On stacking, it really depends on how you want to do it. Okay, so we have a running back, wide receiver stack.
If you're expecting that your, say, quarterback and wide receiver one are going to go off.
Tim, can you explain what it means to go naked with your quarterback?
I love that last part.
How he gets me.
All right, Tim, we'll start with you. What's your favorite stack of the week over on DraftKings?
Yeah, I think that it will be popular, but I don't think it will be as high owned as another one that I think one of the two of you might be mentioning here. So I'm going to go with Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I think that whenever you have like I said, the highest total on the week, you obviously want some. He's getting a huge part of his target share, and I definitely want as much exposure to that game as possible. And then, as you mentioned, if you're going to run it back with somebody, you have a number of good options. But for me, it's probably going to be Marquise Goodwin.
Definitely good call. All right, so you're stacking the Chiefs with Goodwin on the comeback. Gerson, what's your stack of the week?
Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, baby. I'm telling you, they're going to have 300 yards, 5 touchdowns, and then he's going to run it in. No, I'm kidding. It's just that Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes, something crazy is happening there, man. Like, I'm feeling it. Like, I hate to say this because I'm a Raiders fan, but that arm and that speed, you give me that, I think that has 40-point upside. And, I mean, they also come out as my top value. So, like, it tells you how high I want to be on them. So, I mean, give me that stack all day.
All right, you got a correlation, a comeback, or are you bringing Marcus Goodwin back? Are you bringing Kittle back?
I don't really want to bring anybody back. I'm a firm believer. I don't think the 49ers are that great, man. I know they've done well, but I mean, if you want to pick one guy, I think you do Kittle because it was Eric Berry being out. I think Kittle can have a good day, and he's cheaper because you're already paying a lot of money for Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes.
Yep, good stuff. All right, so both of y'all are going with that Chiefs game. I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to take probably a lower-owned stack for this week is going to be Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. And then, obviously, you could bring it back with either Mike Thomas or Kamara. I think my stack, currently on DraftKings, I have Kamara as my comeback. So I love that stack. I think it'll be lower-owned. People are still scared of the Saints' defense. Like I mentioned earlier, I think their DVOA was like 30th against the pass. So Julio Jones, Matt Ryan is my stack of the week. All right, now it's time for our favorite segment of the podcast, the Sick Call of the Week. We've got quite a few viewers on Facebook that may be our first time listening, so I'm going to go ahead and give the recap once again to make sure we know what we're doing. Last year, Gerson was sick, had the flu, made a call on the Saints defense that me and Tim both thought was crazy. They were still a bad defense at that time. We didn't believe them. Yeah, we basically laughed at you and said that you were sick and on your flu was just affecting your judgment. Of course, they go on to do great things against the Carolina Panthers and then go on to be a great defense overall last year. So we invented this segment called the Sick Call of the Week. Basically, it's going to be our low-owned, sort of cheap guys that have some super high upside. I think last week I had Corey Clement. Obviously, he ended up being pretty good. Tim technically had Corey Clement as well. But because being had the same one, he went with Alfred Morris, who actually, he had the right backfield, just the wrong running back. Matt Breida would have been the one to pick there. And Gerson, you had Royce Freeman. You also had the right backfield, but the wrong running back. Of course, Lindsey was the one to go off over there. So near misses for both of y'all there. Corey Clement, I think, is the first one we've hit on this year. We'll start with you, Gerson, this time. Let's go with your Sick Call of the Week. Who you got?
Ooh, you guys ready? It's Corey Clement. I mean, no, wait. It's actually going to be, so last week we saw Corey Clement come in, right? And he was a backup running back when Darren Sproles was out, but Ajayi was playing, right? So it got me thinking, did the Eagles really change their strategy? I don't think so. And that's the other thing. Right now, Corey Clement's kind of questionable. He hasn't been saying that he's not like, off the injury reports. So it got me thinking, like, what if Wendell Smallwood becomes the top value if Corey Clement is questionable, and then next thing you know, he can't play. So I'm going to pick Wendell Smallwood, even though I do believe Corey Clement is going to play. But I'm still going to have Wendell Smallwood. And this is a DraftKings strictly Sick Call of the Week because he's 3,000 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he is minimum price, but you need that touchdown upside, and I can't predict. If I can predict the future, I would, but it's a little harder on FanDuel, but I like him on DraftKings for my sick call of the week at 3,000. I mean, that'll allow me to pay up for Julio, Thomas, and all these other guys. But like we said, this is the sick call of the week, kind of like what Jeff's been doing today, coughing all day on the podcast. I mean, I know he's a little sick, so maybe his sick call of the week is better.
I actually like that Wendell Smallwood call a lot, actually, because you think about it, Clement's probably playing the Jay Ajayi role, and we were playing Clement last week as the Darren Sproles role. So if Clement's going to play Jay Ajayi, then I think I plug in Wendell Smallwood as the Darren Sproles / Corey Clement role. He can end up being pretty good there. So I like that call a lot. So good stuff there. All right, Tim, what you got for your sick call of the week?
All right, yeah, I love that Smallwood call too. So we were talking earlier about the decision a lot of people are going to have to make between Tyler Boyd and Calvin Ridley. But another guy that I really like in that range, and I'm going to give a shout out to Bowdy Harder in the chat for shouting this guy out, and that's Jarius Wright. He's a slot wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers. He's also in that 3,700 range. He doesn't have the target expectation that those guys do, but that's also why you're going to get him at significantly lower ownership. We expect that they're going to have to, stay in that game, and then Devin Funchess doesn't have a real great matchup this week, so Cam's going to have to go other places with the ball. Obviously, CMC is going to be one of those targets, but I think Jarius Wright could end up having a big game.
Yeah, good stuff. I like that call a lot. All right, so my sick call of the week is a guy that I'm stacking. I know Tim mentioned this quarterback earlier. We didn't talk about him too much. That's Blake Bortles. I do like Blake Bortles this week in a home game. I think that even with Fournette back, I think they're going to be pretty decent. So my sick call of the week is going to be actually Dede Westbrook, receiver there in Jacksonville. I know everyone talks about Keelan Cole, and he's the number one receiver there. But when you look at their stats, Westbrook has one fewer target, one fewer reception, and 37 fewer yards than Keelan Cole. And I think he's like a little over $1,000 cheaper, especially on DraftKings. So you're basically getting the same receiver for a lot cheaper. And he has that big play potential. I think he had a 61-yard touchdown last week. So I think his upside is definitely there. It's a great matchup with Tennessee. They struggle against the pass historically, going back to last season. So Westbrook, a good Westbrook Bortles stack for me. I think I kind of like that. So that's my sick call of the week. All right, guys.
I love it.
Let's go around the table here. Tell everybody where we can follow you, where we can find you at, and then we'll wrap the podcast up. Tim, we'll go to you first, man. Where can we follow you at?
Yeah, as Gerson mentioned earlier, you always want to stay on top of updates all the way through Sunday. So if you want the updated information, find us in the DFS Roundtable on Facebook. You can also find me on Twitter at KetoDFS. That's KETODFS. All
right, Gerson, of course we can find you as well in the DFS Roundtable Facebook. Where can we find you on Twitter?
You can find me at OneFantasyG, capital F, capital G, on Twitter, and on the DFS Roundtable. That's where I'm at all the time. I mean, I basically post all my plays. I post my spreadsheet. I post live videos. I answer any questions, and I do it all for free at no charge. I don't charge people. So basically, I mean, this is just my biased opinion. I do a live feed video on Facebook on Saturdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And I take questions. I try to answer as many as I can. Sometimes I can't because we get up to a lot of questions. And
yep.
Jeff knows all about it. I mean, pretty tough sometimes, but we try to reply to them. I cover the whole slate. I go position by position and then just go overall what I think of the slate.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Before we check out here, I want to just touch on a few things. We just had a question from Rhodes. I can't pronounce the last name, so we're just going to go with Rhodes. She asked if we'd ever won on FanDuel. I know Gerson, of course, you had that big win last year. How much was it? $7,000, something like that?
Like 40.
44,000.
Oh, 44,000. Yeah. My bad.
That's the thing. I've won. Like when people say if I've won a lot of money, but it's like in different kind of hits, like 15,000, 20,000, 10,000, 5,000. But that's the thing. I always tell people. It's not about hitting one time. It's about profiting weekly. That's the mindset you should have.
Agreed. Now, just to go off that, Gerson is a volume player. He maxes out the Millie Maker sometimes. So if you want to win that much money, you really got to pay a lot of lineups. My biggest win, obviously, this was this year. I think I played in the preseason. Took down a couple GPPs on both DraftKings and FanDuel. I played only $40 because it is preseason. I don't want to go in too deep. And I won $1,400 off that $40. And the computer I'm using right now to do this podcast, it was paid for by FanDuel. And the laptop that you can't see that's just kind of off the side here is MacBook Pro. It was also paid for by FanDuel. So I've won a few times. I do better on NBA. I've just been really getting into the NFL this year. I really want to try to hit this hard. So good stuff there. And Tim, I know you've had some pretty big wins. You want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had anything like Gerson, but I think he mentioned something very important, that we should all just strive for return on investment and making that money day to day and week to week. You know, $500 hits here, $1,000 hits here is always nice, but you really want to make that money day in and day out and make sure and, you know, have good bankroll management so you're not just killing your whole roll in 1 week. So stay on top of that. You definitely got to pay to play, but you got to be smart about it too.
All right.
And pay your taxes. Pay your taxes.
Yes,
Pay your taxes.
And pay your bookies too. Don't get behind to your bookies.
Good stuff.
That doesn't end well for anybody.
All right, guys. With that, I again am Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Of course, you can find me and my 40-plus writers at goingfor2.com. We do DFS and season-long fantasy. Find the podcast at talkloudradio.com, on YouTube, on the Going for Two app for iOS and Android. You can find me everywhere. I'm all over Facebook. I'm in the DFS Roundtable. I'm in a bunch of different groups I manage. So you can find me pretty much everywhere. With that said, guys, let's have a good weekend. Let's win some money.
Peace.
Go Pack, go.